little earlier today, but we'll make do. Um, Commissioner Collins will lead us in the prayer, and Commissioner Slater will lead us in the pledge. If you would, please stand.
Let's pray. Father God, I thank you. Trust in your sovereignty. What is it? Trust you. Servicemen, time of uncertainty. Pray that pray, Lord. Pray that we
Thank you, guys. I want to introduce a few people. Gabe is from CTAS. You're going to hear a lot more from him here shortly, but we also have Assessor of Property Stanley Thompson here, Doug Berry from the IDB Board, our City Manager, Cleveland City Manager, Joe Fifus, sir. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it. Again, everybody, we got directors, our frequent flyers, we call them, here. Thank you guys for being here. We'll have a packed agenda, so we'll get started. Going to our agenda. Also, members and anyone who's going to be talking before the committee, please remember to use the microphone so the millions of people who are watching us can hear you. Then we'll go here. Mayor Davis, you're up here. Report from the mayor. Mayor Davis, you're recognized for as much time as you need.
I don't have anything to report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to change a little bit on our agenda for time. We'll get to the budget amendments here after our presentation. But as you see, the agenda items, A is the indexing. That's what Gabe is here for. Then B, the funding on opioid. Then the Hopewell School Project update. So with that, we'll go to the agenda item A. And Gabe, appreciate you coming down from Knoxville this morning. And basically, I'll introduce, he is here to chat with us about some of the things that we can do. And right now, it's basically knowledge transfer, understanding what's all. We're not deciding anything today with respect to this, but this has to do with the appraisals and the ratio study that we've been impacted over the last 2 cycles and how we can address that. For those who don't remember, the last ratio study was 30%. What that means is for us in revenue, it was about $1.4 million, Mayor, I think. And this is money that is basically leaves our, excuse me, leaves our, man, leaves us and you never see it again. It also affects veterans and senior citizens that are on fixed, what is it? Senior citizens that are on on their taxes. So it's not just our revenue, it also affects the veterans and the senior citizens as well. With that, Gabe, I'll let you take over. Let him get through his presentations, and then we'll open up for questions and answers and that kind of stuff. Thank you, Gabe.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee. Mr. Mayor, thank you for the opportunity to come and speak with you this morning. We are moving into a season, if you will, where the reappraisal process is being questioned and shorter cycles have kind of become the topic of conversation. You may remember in 2024, there was a bill pushed by the comptroller that would have eliminated the 5 and 6 year reappraisal cycles. As you know, or probably know, the historical cycles are 4, 5, and 6. The majority of counties across the state are currently in a 5-year cycle. The ratio affects each of those counties differently because the longer your cycle, the more ratio studies you have. Bradley has historically been on a 4-year cycle, so even that change, legislative change, that would have eliminated the 5 and 6 wouldn't have necessarily affected you. That particular bill had great support going through committee. went through the Senate floor, on the Senate floor, passed without any problems. Once it got to the House floor, there was a little bit of confusion about a fiscal note assigned to it that was a little misleading. It insinuated that shortening the reappraisal cycle would create a tax hike, and that's not what the intent was at all. Revenues, by their very design, are revenue neutral because you're taking into consideration the revenues generated the year before the reappraisal, and there's a certified rate calculation that this body either has to approve or you have to choose to exceed that rate if you choose to do so. So that's where we started 2 years ago by shortening the cycle to eliminate the 5 and 6. It didn't get across the finish line. Last year, there was a legislative change that expanded the reappraisal statutes that allows what's called indexing. Now, indexing is nothing more than a mid-cycle updating of value, and I will get there, but I wanted to at least offer that to you in my opening statements, just so that you know where we're heading and how we've gotten here. As the chairman mentioned, my name's Gabe Looney. I'm a property assessment consultant with CTAS. In a previous life, I worked in the county assessor's office in 2 different counties over a 20-year period. So I've been involved in the assessment process for several years before moving over to CTAS. And now I've currently been assigned, I've got 33 assessors that I work with in the eastern third of the state. So that's my target group, or my customer base, if you will. So as we go into the conversation about more frequent reappraisal, this presentation usually, as you could expect, usually is being presented to counties that are currently on a 5 or 6 year cycle. So we're impressing upon them or educating them on the process to shorten that cycle, because we think that it only makes sense in this day and age to be closer to market more frequently, okay? There's so much data available to the general public, the property owner, and the taxpayer related to the transactions of real estate. They are in tune with what's going on in the marketplace. We believe that by delaying that adjustment in value through the revaluation process, it creates confusion over time. So when we talk about shortening the cycle and those components that kind of lead to it, current market value actually implies more frequent revaluation, okay? We're members of associations of assessing groups. We have a national, international association, and the experts, if you will, in the field, through their technical standards, say that you should be valuing property as close to market as frequently as feasible, okay? Now, with the understanding there are costs associated with that, it's not everybody can value on an annual basis, but we do think that at some point in the future that will be the ultimate goal. But for the purposes of what's happening in the state of Tennessee, because we've historically been on a 4, 5, and 6 year cycle, if we can just do a step down process to shorten those cycles, we think that is a step in the right direction. So as with a delayed reappraisal, the longer time span that falls between reappraisal to reappraisal, appraisal uniformity and equity breaks down over time. Because generally speaking, real property values are not subject to adjustment mid-cycle. So if you think of your home that was just reassessed here in Bradley County last year, unless you initiate some kind of change or some improvement escaped taxation and wasn't included in the property records, your value technically, in theory, is not going to change until you reappraise again in 2029, okay? So your assessed value is locked in, it's not going to change, but the market will do as it pleases. And as we've seen over the last 5 years, there's been great appreciation in the growth of the real estate market. So the market value of your property will continue, most likely, will continue to grow over the next 4 years, but your assessed value will stay flat, okay? That creates a gap, if you will, and that in and of itself is how this ratio that we're talking about is determined. The state will come in year 2, they'll come to Bradley County in 2027 and measure how much the market has changed since the 2025 reappraisal. The chairman mentioned that your last two ratio studies, your ratios, I think your last one came in the low 70s, implying that the market had outpaced the assessments by 30% or close to 30%. That's how that process works. So when we talk about the uniformity and equity of value breaking down, that's what we mean. The more frequent reappraisals, which you're already on a 4-year cycle, it'll allow for the updating of value. Indexing, in your case, would allow for the updating of value, which will restore that uniformity and equity. Probably to this body and the full commission, probably the most important comment I will make today related to a shorter reappraisal cycle or indexing is that it will eliminate the equalization ratio that's applied to your personal property and public utility assessments. Okay, let me say that again. If you index and eliminate the ratio study, it will take away or eliminate the equalization ratio that is a negative adjustment to your personal property and public utility assessments. It's an automatic, the way the system or the model is right now as we speak, it's automatic. So unless the assessor's office, the assessor moves to do something to eliminate that ratio, that adjustment will continue. It's automatic. The assessor has no control over it, okay? In most cases, over the last 5 years, those ratios have been historically low, okay? So for counties like Bradley that are in a 4-year cycle, we have seen those ratios fall in the 70s. Even so with the counties that are on a 5-year cycle, they have two ratios. They have a ratio in the second year. Their ratios have been in the low 70s or high 60s. And then their second ratio, which happens 2 years later, has fallen as low as in the low 50s, low to high 50s. All right. So in those cases, those counties, by delaying the updating of value, the gap between the real property values and the assessed values as much as 50% off. Okay, that is quite frankly a nightmare when it comes to the revaluation in the reappraisal year, because they're going to have to make that adjustment to get those values back to 100%, and their starting point or their county average is going to be in the high 70s or 80% increase, and that's just the average. So that particular movement is not well received by the public, because immediately when their value goes up 70 and 80%, they automatically think their taxes are going up 70, 80%, and that's not the case because of revenue neutrality and the certified tax rate calculation. I live in Blount County. Our previous reappraisal, I was one of those, my value went up 73%. I share that with you just to kind of, for the purposes of explanation. So we're on at the time, we were on a 4-year cycle. My value went up 73%. It was a little more than the county average. So our certified rate went from $2.47 to $1.59. Our rate went down 88 cents. I think you saw some of that last year because your new certified rate came in substantially lower than what your previous tax rate was in 2024. So that's kind of the moving parts of that. But as far as this body and the full commission is involved, it is very important how, there's been a lot of pushback from counties over the last 5 years to the comptroller saying these ratios are really hurting us from a revenue standpoint, okay? What can we do to eliminate that? And as I mentioned, his first move was to shorten the reappraisal cycles, which would have eliminated at least one of the ratios. And then last year there was a movement to index, which gives you the option to remove that second ratio and make those ratios go away completely, which would keep your revenues whole. So just from an assessment standpoint, we get a lot of foundational information just based on how the moving parts of the reassessment. Obviously, the viability of the property tax depends on the accuracy of the assessments. And again, that just goes back to supporting a shorter cycle with values being representative of what's going on in the marketplace. I believe that taxpayers will benefit from smaller incremental changes. As I mentioned, when you have a delayed reappraisal that's 4 or 5 years, and we're seeing the growth that we're seeing right now, and you have ratios that are in even the 70s, but in most cases, they're in the 50s and 60s, there's a substantial amount of increase over that time. The taxpayer forgets that the last reappraisal was 4 or 5 years ago. So the first thing they say is, how did it increase this much in 1 year? Well, technically it didn't increase that much in 1 year because it's been 4 years or 5 years since you last reappraised. So that incremental adjustment by shortening the cycle or updating indexing in year 2 creates an incremental movement where you're catching up instead of having, and pick your number, I think you were somewhere maybe around 40% this last reappraisal cycle. Instead of waiting 4 years and having a 40% increase, you have a 2-year adjustment and have a 20% increase. It's a little more palatable. May not be as low as folks want it, but it is a little more palatable because it's incremental and it's smaller by its very nature. And then, as was mentioned by the chairman, we talk a lot about the ratio and the impact to personal property and public utility assessments and ultimately the revenues that the county receives. But as far as taxpayers are concerned, you may or may not know that there is a adjustment to the tax relief recipients' credits or subsidies, that the payments that they receive from the state. That's a state level program. So during a ratio study year, the ratio is applied in their scenario to the tax rate. So a tax relief recipient, a veteran or a low-income elderly person, will actually receive less credit to help with their property tax payment in the ratio year than they did the year before. Okay, it's effectively a tax hike. If this body doesn't change the tax rate, but that taxpayer, the veteran and the low-income elderly person, is going to have to pay more money. They're going to have to dig a little deeper in their own pocket and pay more out of their pocket to make up the difference of the adjustment, the ratio adjustment to their relief payment. Okay, so that's just another point that we want to mention. So as we transition into the conversation about indexing, there was a legislative change last year that expanded the reappraisal language. Okay, the assessor has much more flexibility now. The traditional 4, 5, and 6 year reappraisal cycles still exist, but there's been some language that would expand the options available to the assessor. As long as they're on a 4-year reappraisal cycle or less, they have the option to update with or without indexing. Okay, quite frankly, they could update annually based on the language in the statute. We're not there yet. We're not seeing that anywhere. But I will tell you that the reappraisal counties that I'm working with in 2026, there's a movement, and remember, the vast majority of them have historically been on a 5-year reappraisal cycle. They are moving to a 4-year with indexing in year 2 to eliminate that ratio. That is where the movement is right now. And we do believe that is a good step in the right direction for those counties. It's most important that I say this so that you understand clearly. The assessor is the driver on the reappraisal cycle. Okay, the assessor is somewhat in control of where you're going to move, or if you're going to stay where you're at, those kind of things, because they're directly involved or related to their ability to shorten their cycle. Do they need is there staffing where it needs to be? Do they need additional resources, or whatever the case may be? So it's important for you to understand the assessor is driving the bus, if you will, on what reappraisal cycle you're on. Okay, hopefully with broad support either by this body or even the cities. Okay, so indexing allows values to be adjusted back to market based on sales activity. So it's really just, indexing is not a full-fledged countywide reappraisal like you just went through last year. It is really just a mathematical adjustment, okay? So the county would be broken up into market areas based on location and character. I think you can, in your own mind's eye, you can visualize what that looks like. There are certain parts of the county that are growing, hot spots, and then there are maybe rural farm areas that aren't growing as much. They're pretty flat as far as their growth goes. So you're going to have different market areas all over the county. Each of those market areas will generate a ratio specific to the market, if you will. So when indexing occurs, there's just a statistical factor multiplier adjustment of that factor, of that ratio, to that value that would bring all of those values back to 100% or market value, okay? So it's mathematical, it's statistical in nature. It is not a full-fledged reappraisal where you're adjusting price per acre, price per square foot. You're not analyzing construction costs like they did last year, okay? And one of the important things to understand about indexing, the way the laws are written, anytime you update value back to market, back to 100% of market value, it triggers a certified tax rate, okay? So if you index in year 2, it would trigger a certified tax rate just like it did last year for the full-fledged reappraisal. So in the case of Bradley County, because you're on a 4-year cycle, you'll have a ratio study in the second year. If you chose to index, you would update values in 27. It would eliminate the ratio. There would be no negative adjustment to personal property, public utilities. Tax relief payments would stay whole. There would be no negative adjustment to that. And it would trigger a certified tax rate, okay, just like your reappraisal does, okay? As I've mentioned several times already, indexing will protect the tax relief payments, no adjustment due to equalization. It also, something we don't talk about, but if a taxpayer or tax representative brings an appeal forward on a piece of property, it's usually commercial, industrial. If there's a ratio that is in place, if you had an appeal that went into 27 or 28 and there was a ratio study done, that property owner, through the appeal process, would be eligible for a ratio adjustment to that appeal. That's completely unrelated to the value. That's just another adjustment. It's almost as though they're double dipping, but there is a place there. Some of our professional tax appealers are taking full advantage of that ratio adjustment. If we look back at your last ratio, which was at 71%, if I came to the administrative judge and could get them just to move 25–30% just through the ratio study on a value, that's a win-win scenario for me from a taxing standpoint. So appeals are directly, inadvertently, we don't talk about that a lot, but appeals are also impacted by the ratios. By indexing, you would eliminate that option because values would be back at 100%. We believe eliminating the ratio will increase county revenues and allow for more reliable forecasting from a budget standpoint, okay? Because right now, with the way things are, the current model, you reappraise, year 1, you stay at 100%, your ratio stays at 100%, but in year 2, that ratio, you're going to have a ratio which is going to negatively affect your personal property and public utility assessments. It becomes difficult to forecast where you're going to be, okay? We think by eliminating that ratio, it will increase your revenues and will allow for you to have more reliable forecasting from a year-to-year basis because you won't have the ratio. All right, I've said a lot. I know a lot of it's technical. I'm going to stop and
You're going to stop and let us ask you a lot of questions, huh?
let you ask some questions.
All right, so any questions from Commissioner Hughes, Commissioner Alford, Commissioner Collins, Commissioner Slater, Chairman?
Can I summarize real quick? Can I give you a quick summary statement?
the Cliff Notes version.
I'm not very smart. What you're telling me is the idea is to reduce variability. And the more often, we've got this variability here, and if by indexing, we can reduce it here. The trade-off is cost to our assessor's office, correct?
Potentially, yes.
Well, I mean, I guess he'll have to work more. And if we move towards an annual indexing, which is possible, that would mean he would have to do that. His office would have to do that, which would mean financially we would have to supply that, correct?
Correct.
Okay. But the idea is real-time value, as close to as possible.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Good job, by the way. Awesome.
Thank you.
Mr. Slater? So a couple of things, a little bit more of the mechanics of the indexing. So you said that you have, obviously Bradley County, we have different parts of the county. We have our industrial parks, and then we have, you know, some subdivisions that are from a value point of view. Everybody's valuable, but, you know, market value of their residentials are more than some others, you know. Not to hurt any part of it. Let's say we have a Beverly Hills, you know, something there. Then we have another part. So you're basically taking one section over here and saying, okay, the average home over here or residential here increased by 10%, but over here it was only 2%, and there's where your indexing comes into play,
Correct.
right? And then Stanley can adjust accordingly. All right. So how does that affect when we get that certified tax rate? We went from $1.43 down to 99 cents because countywide our assessments, you know, went up that percentage wise. How would that, if our quote unquote one section of Bradley County went up 10% and another went down or only went up 2%?
Let's answer that in relationship to your last certified rate.
Sure.
Okay. So the impact of the certified tax rate is somewhat tied to where you fall individually in relationship to the county average increase during the reappraisal year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if let's say that if your county average increase was 40% last year, okay, if your increase personally, individually, was less than 40%, you're gonna see more protection from the certified rate, right? You're probably, if your increase was 30%, but the county average was 40, you're probably gonna pay less taxes. Okay, the closer you are to 40%, you're gonna pay about the same taxes, and if you're above 40%, you're gonna pay more taxes, even with the certified rate. The revenue neutrality attached to the certified rate does not protect you as an individual. The calculation is based on the total levy that the county received in the year prior, okay? So individually, some can pay more, some can pay less, some can pay the same, but the total levy, the math, the formula, if you will, that generates the certified rate will generate the same amount of levy, total levy, that was calculated or received the year before, okay? So in your scenario, you're going to have hot spots throughout the county. This is not a perfect way to explain this, but think in terms of commission districts, right? They're lines on a map, right? Let's say that the commission districts were markets. So you would have multiple markets based on commission districts. They probably don't line up anywhere near what true markets, real estate markets
You're
look
good,
like,
you're good.
But for the purpose of explaining, so you have these different markets, okay? So District 1 may be a hot spot, okay? It may be growing at, over a 2-year period, it may have grown 20%, okay? District 5 may be growing a little bit slower. They may be at 5%, okay? Okay? And then everything in between, right? So each district would have a different ratio or a factor based on the sales activity within their specific districts. That specific factor is applied to the values of those properties within that district to bring them back to 1. Everybody goes back to 1, and then there's a recalculation of the certified rate.
Tax rate, okay.
It depends on what the average is across the board, where you fall as far as, are you going to pay the same amount of tax or something less or something more. But I will tell you mathematically, if you shorten the cycle and the increase is less, I believe it's more likely that more folks are, with the certified tax rate calculation, are gonna pay, more likely gonna pay the same amount of tax that they paid the year before. Okay, just by the simple mathematics of shortening the cycle and having an incremental adjustment.
Exactly. So when you and I chatted a gazillion times about the ratio study, and what it does is industry and commercial, help me here, Stanley. By March 1, they have to apply for their, is it a rebate? I'm looking at Stanley. On the per, so they get a rebate based off of that percentage, or so this
As
will.
long as they submit their schedule, they're required by law to submit a personal property schedule by March 1st each year to list their assets. Okay?
Right, and that's the whole reason why this is happening anyway, is you have two parts of property tax. You have the real and you have the personal. The real is what's done every 4 years, right? And the personal is done every year.
Personal and-
Self-appraised, but it's done every year. We obviously don't change the rate every year.
Right.
So that right there, and that was the argument, was that from their point of view, we should be changing that rate every year because they're appraising every year. This eliminates that. So in other words, they're not gonna get the rebate, is what I'm getting at with my question.
Right. What you may not realize now, just by default, they are reassessed annually. Okay, that's a self-reported personal property and public utilities
And let me say,
are reassessed annually. It's self-reporting.
let me remind them, this is the industry and commercials who are appraising their equipment, their conveyor belts and their computers, all the
Furniture and
things
fixtures,
that they're required to do business.
Correct. So they're required to submit an asset list annually by March 1st. Okay, so they're already closer to market value or 100% on a year-to-year basis. Okay, and as a class of property owners, they say, well, we really appreciate the opportunity to pay at market value, but we think there's an inequity there because our real property friends they get a delayed reappraisal. They only update every 4 years in Bradley County, but we're paying market value annually. And the courts agreed with them, and the remedy, if you will, at the time, and this is 30 years ago, the remedy was a ratio
A
adjustment.
rebate to them.
Right, an adjustment to equalize them with the real property. Now, the courts since then have historically said, you know, if a property is underappraised, the remedy is to correct their appraisal, which would bring real property values back to market. And that's what shortening the cycle and indexing does. But I wanted to mention what happens right now when you have a 30% ratio adjustment in the second year. You're shifting the burden to the residential property owner. Okay.
That's what happened here.
Yeah.
Right. I'm looking at Stanley. Stanley's sitting behind you, and
And that's what's happening across the board, county to county.
And to that point, this is what when Stanley, I taught, and we kind of have the numbers to back it up. In this last reappraisal, you have basically 3 different entities, right? You have the residentials, everybody, all townhomes, residential stuff. You have commercial and industry. Then you have farms, agriculture, greenbelt, stuff like that. Residentials went up. I mean, people were willing to pay a lot more than for houses here in Bradley County than what people were putting them up from the market. You know, we have an example over here on 17th Street. The house was listed at $270, and then somebody from California comes and says, "I'll pay $350." Well, nobody's going to turn that down. So the market just went up dramatically, and that affects everybody. Industry and commercial kind of stayed even for the most part, and nobody's buying or selling too much farmland, too much on there. But the tax rate is assessed to everybody.
Correct.
So residential took the brunt of that right there. How does indexing address that? You got different parts of Bradley County as far as the assessment goes with this indexing.
Well, it's going to spread the burden evenly to each of those classes of property. Where I think you mentioned that the impact of the ratio may have been in excess of $1 million.
For us, Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, it was about 1.4 when we did the whole rebates.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Right.
So
And for our friends over in the city, I think it was a little over $1 million as well. So overall, I mean,
So you had a ratio in the second year. It technically rolled over into your third year, even though there wasn't a new ratio study. It's still the impact follows into the subsequent year, and then you revalue in your fourth year. But to your point, that impact, I mean, I guess by indexing, you're going to update the value and eliminate that $1 million adjustment. That puts pressure, it puts strain on the legislative bodies from a funding standpoint, right? When you're coming to the table with over $1 million less than you potentially got the year before, they're on a whole lot of options. The other thing that impacts you is that you never truly recover from that revenue loss unless you do a tax rate increase, okay? And I know those are dirty words in most places,
Yeah.
okay? So you don't want to do that, but by indexing, you eliminate that loss, if you will. You keep everybody whole, even though it's personal property and public utility are not going to get the discount. Residential and real property is going to see an adjustment back, an incremental adjustment back upwards, but it keeps everybody level, okay? Which puts more money in the coffers, if you will. Now, understand this. It will be perceived as a tax hike, okay? More frequent reappraisal and updating of value is always saying, oh, they're chasing the dollars, right? That's not the intent. The intent is to stay closer to market and to eliminate the negative adjustments to personal property and public utilities, which keeps more revenue in the coffers, if you will, and reduces the strain that the legislative body is going to be confronted with when balancing your budget. Okay? Because not only are you going to get the $1,000,000-something that was adjusted due to the equalization of personal property and public utilities, but you're also adjust something that we don't talk about again. Remember where I started. I said real property in theory doesn't change unless you initiate a change through an addition. You build an addition on your home or put a swimming pool in the backyard or something like that. So your real property is locked in. So from 25 to 29, your real property value is not going to adjust, okay, unless you initiate some type of change. Well, the value of that property the market goes where it wants to, so it creates that gap. So even if that property, anything that has sold since last year, your assessor is not at liberty to adjust them to market value, regardless of how much more they sold for. Okay, that's law. Okay, so over the next 3 years until you reappraise, the example you gave where a property sold for $350,000, it may have been assessed something considerably less. The assessor's not at liberty to adjust those values. Okay, they have to wait until the next reappraisal before they adjust that. By shortening the cycle or indexing, you're allowed to make that adjustment and you get those dollars back in the pot. Okay, so there are a lot of moving parts that are going to help the revenue stream from a budgeting standpoint that will help the county.
so that's the benefits of it. And obviously, I'm in the school of thought that there's nothing for free. So what's the quote unquote con, if you will, of going to indexing? My assumption, and it is just that, is Stanley's going to need more equipment, more technology, more people perhaps to administer this indexing concept. Or what's the other side of this? Or is it just we should have been doing this forever?
I think that's at least a good starting point. There should be an expectation. Again, the assessor is the driver on that, and they're going to have influence on, whether it's people or training or additional software or additional resources. Obviously, if you're a personal property or public utility taxpayer, you're probably not going to be like the idea of not getting that discount every 2 years.
So there's going to be opposition
You would expect.
from the TVA or
Yeah, the business association might say that we don't like this.
okay, that's fine.
Because, because of that adjustment. And then last but not least, anytime, and again, I'll mention I'm from Blount County. They've gone from a 4-year to a 3-year to last week, they approved a 2-year plan, okay? There was a lot of conversation. It was perceived, at least by one of the commissioners, as a tax hike. That is not the intent, okay? Still have the certified tax rate. There's still revenue neutrality. Remembering that it's the calculation is based on the total levy, so I want to be perfectly transparent in that some people will pay less, some people will pay the same, and some people will pay more depending on where they fall on that.
And that happens now.
That is correct.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
But we do believe that an incremental, it's one of these, it's the difference between looking at a delayed reappraisal process. When I say delayed, meaning 4 or 5 years or whatever the case may be, and shortening and doing that update more frequently. Okay, is it more acceptable to have incremental adjustments, whether it be for a budgeting standpoint of the county or even as a personal taxpayer? I believe that it is more beneficial for me to be able to make incremental adjustments than it is to wait, have this delayed adjustment, and then this big increase 4 years from now.
I tend to agree with. So, I'm gathering that this is 100% the assessor of property's decision. It's ours is Stanley. So he makes the final call with or without the commission. I mean, obviously we'll support him, but it's his decision to go to indexing.
It is his decision. He's the one that will bring forth the plan.
So,
Okay, so it starts with him. If he wants to pursue it, it's his decision.
so Stanley, it's up to you. Come on up here.
Gabe's right. We've talked about this since all these values started going up so
Yeah.
much. Last reappraisal I had to submit a reappraisal plan for the next 4 years.
You did.
In that plan, I did put a sentence in there that if indexing were allowed, that we would possibly want to go to indexing. At the time, the law had not changed. So after that, we're looking at our values now. I understand that I can't really change until next reappraisal because he was talking about the market areas and the neighborhoods. That's what we're doing now. I've kind of shifted my folks around in the office, and we're trying to determine those neighborhoods. When you say that, you could have I'm going to give you some subdivision names. You could have Dockery subdivision and possibly Rollingbrook would be in the same neighborhood. Even though they're not touching, they're the same type, similar homes. And to believe it or not, this last reappraisal, those homes increased percent-wise more than, say, a Mountain Brook because people were buying those homes, redoing them, and then flipping them. Percent-wise, they increased maybe 50, 60, 70%, where Mountain Brook might go up 20.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of give you an idea. But what we're doing now, I've moved my staff around. We had some retirements. We brought in some people. We're trying to create those neighborhoods just to be prepared for this if we go to it. We're not seeing those numbers rise like we did 4 years ago. No, as far as the ratio, just ran stats. It's been a year since last reappraisal, and my values are probably close to 4% below what the market's showing overall. 4 years ago, we would have been 15% below the market, the way things are going. So we don't know what the future is going to bring as far as, real estate, what it's going to sell for. You all hear this too. What if the market plummets? Well, indexing would take care of that too. So if values were to drop and you do an indexing, it's going to go the other way.
Okay, that raises a good, once we quote unquote implement, or Stanley implements indexing, and we're like, well, we don't need it anymore. Can we do away with indexing?
Yes.
So we can, our assessor can basically implement indexing as he or she needs to.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe the new language provides a lot of flexibility for the assessor. I would agree with Stanley in that the number one project right now is to make sure that the markets are well defined and what we call delineated. So yes, that is That's a project into itself that needs to be in place correctly before you pursue the indexing option.
In the past, I think we call them neighborhoods or market.
Yeah.
We've had like 9 for the whole county. Well, that's gotta be broken down from 9 to, you gotta start going in more into neighborhoods. The time is almost like commission district around the county. And now it's gonna have to be broken down and be more, well-defined. So, and kind of a little of the history when I was on, I've done these reappraisals since 93. Well, I think we were on a 5 maybe at that time. Then we went to a 6, and my idea was to go to a 4 because as the assessor and as commissioners, you hear, why did it go up in 1 year? I wouldn't mind if it went up a little bit each year, and the idea was to close that gap. And when that helped a little bit, even though this last year didn't help a lot because the values went so much, but it also done away with that extra year of a ratio study.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, we were able to, we've had racial studies forever. It's just this last year we really
The last two.
seen it.
The
yes.
last two got us.
So we were able to pick up enough growth that it really didn't, it bothered us, but not like this last time. And I just, and you hear this too, where's all the money going from all this construction, all this growth we're seeing? So I just ran the number. You'd have to have a 1,000 houses paying $1,000 each to bring in $1 million.
Right.
And that value of that home would have to be around 400,000. We didn't get that in 1 year. We don't get that in 1 year. And then you go back to that ratio, we lost $1 million. We might have brought in $1 million, but all of our work that we did over there just kind of got just wiped out. So that's, I'm just not saying yay or nay, we're going to the indexing, but that idea is there, and it's almost like we got to wait and see what the future's going to bring.
Well, we'll certainly work with you on it, if that's the direction you want to
As
go
far
in.
as staffing, you're talking about staffing.
Well,
We've I've kind of brought in another guy for the field work, and we're working on that. I've always done well with technology.
yeah,
I may be asking for more money with this aerial photography. We do a lot from the aerial photography. We do a lot from that, and just there's some other tricks out there in the trade right now that people are pushing for this thing because they know it's coming. I think it's not just here; it's other states too.
Gabe, that's a good question. How many counties have gone to the legislature just passed this law last year, right?
Indexing was approved by the governor last summer.
So how many counties have approved, are going to indexing, or thinking about it? I mean,
Well, this year is the first real year, right, since it was just approved last summer. So the reappraisal counties, I have Johnson, Carter, Hawkins, Granger, Putnam. That's 5 of my counties that I work with that are moving from a 5 to a 4-year with indexing.
yeah, we've already got that part done.
Right. They're just adding the indexing component, so they will eliminate the ratio in the second year. Hamblin County, they reappraised actually in 25. They amended to a 4-year with indexing. They did that the last week of January. And then I have 3 counties, Blount, Sullivan, and Knox. Sullivan has already moved to a 2-year reappraisal cycle. Blount moved to a 2-year last week, and Knox is moving to a 2-year. So the movement is to take the steps necessary to eliminate the ratio. Personally, I think the 2's fairly aggressive. I think you might agree with me. I think the 4-year with indexing from a labor standpoint and just all the moving parts of the reappraisal, the 4-year with indexing in year 2 is probably the better option.
Thank you.
Mr.
All right.
Chairman,
Any, Mayor Davis, I'm sorry.
he didn't talk a whole lot about what got us to where we're at, but especially in the last time whenever the ratio study came into play, and it was a big negative, but not just for us, all across the state. And the comptroller, I don't want to say anything out of whack with the comptroller, but he was pushing to lower the years from 5 to 4 to 3 to 2. And some of us, the Mayor's Association, working with the Assessor Association, said it's got to be a better way. That's a pretty costly fix. Instead of costing us $1 million, we might spend $500,000 to save that $1 million. There's got to be a better way. Common sense said, could we not do, we didn't have the word indexing in our vocabulary at the time, but common sense the discussions at the legislature where there's got to be a way of bringing those assessments up to par on a more regular basis so that it doesn't hit us so hard. But long story short, the Mayor Association and working with CTAS, and I think the assessors joined in at some point, came up with the idea of indexing, which in my opinion is a no-brainer. We don't have to go to the 2-year, we stay on the 4-year cycle. Stanley agrees to index, and there's, we don't want to say there's not going to be any additional costs, but it'd be minimal compared to going to a 2-year. So we save the additional cost, and we get the job done a different way. That was our intent, and I think that's what's been accomplished, and you'll see, in my opinion, almost everybody going to it over the next year or two, I think, because it's one of the few things that comes from that particular department that makes sense, in my opinion. But the legislature have finally come up with this idea, adopted it with everybody's support, and the governor signed it, so I think it's a good thing. It'll be a little more work for the assessors, but once they get those things created the first year, then every 4 years, I guess, because they'll be doing a reappraisal every 2 years, so the second 2 years, they'll just be adjusting those neighborhoods once they're created. So it won't be that big of a deal, I don't think, once they get them started this first time. So bottom line is, it's a good thing to be doing, in my opinion.
Thank you, Mayor. I tend to agree with you. I mean, some of what we hear and seeing other counties doing the same thing. Commissioner Alford, did you have anything?
Just a couple of things. Glad to see Stanley's working on this subdivisions and getting that already ahead of the game, you might say. How far along are you on that?
Sorry, we don't have microphones hanging from the ceiling.
Friday really was the last day to pay taxes from the reappraisal. So we've got through that 1-year cycle, is what we're calling. So now it's really, we'll start really narrowing more down on that. We've been working on, appeals and stuff for you.
But you're preparing for
We're
27.
We're
is what you're-
preparing for it, but like I said, I don't see us being able to do it, really. Gabe, you correct me or not. I know at that last meeting we went to, they're like, well, if you didn't have your neighborhoods created,
Yeah,
you're behind the 8 ball. You can't really do that until 20, we put it in place in 29.
That was my next question, I guess. If we decide to go with indexing, what kind of time frame are we looking at to install it and get it going up and
I
going?
think it would probably be year 31 before it actually went into play.
So we got another ratio coming in.
Yeah, we're gonna have a ratio. It's just not gonna be 30.
Well, the 4% sounds good.
Yeah, and that's where that's getting close to what I used to call normal. I mean, honestly, you look at when we do a reappraisal, it's based off the sales from 2024. That began in January of 24, so you got a whole year. We've got calendar over. You can look at sales, how they each month, what they did. So you low here, and then it went up by December. So same thing works with reappraisal. As soon as we send out, people don't like this, we're already below market. When we mail out in April or May, we're already 4 months in. We're already below January 1.
But the Real Estate Association sends a report, and the last one I saw that basically houses are residential staying on the market a lot longer than they used to.
Yeah.
They used to be under 50 days or something like that, and now it's over 65 days. That's how they measure
I
it.
think
but-
they're staying on longer, but
Yeah.
I don't,
Mr.
and the
Alford?
values have dropped some from where they were. They're still high.
So if we have to wait till another reappraisal term and look at it 30, whatever you said.
Yeah.
Next reappraisal, if we stay on the 4-year cycle, would it be smart to drop it to a 2-year or stay at 4 till the next time around?
I think I'm like with Gary. I think indexing is probably the way to go until this is really proven. If we ran numbers, kind of man hours and how many people we'd have to have if we went to a reappraisal, doing what we do, we'd about have to add 7 or 8 people to do a reappraisal. Whereas indexing is more mathematical, computer, AI, whatever you want to call it. It's going to run those numbers for you. And, we have 2 or 3 people that can do that instead of 6 to 8.
Yeah, I'm talking about this next appraisal, not the indexing year, but
Yeah,
the
that
next
would be,
appraisal.
that's going to be in 29, and, we're just plugging along just like we always have.
Stay at the 4-year, you think?
I think so. I don't think I can change, to be honest with you. I know some counties have went to a 3. honestly, I don't see the benefit of a 3 other than to shorten the amount of time. But you still got an index, or
Yeah.
not an index, a ratio in there, so you're still losing. I don't know why I would go to a 3, other than getting out of reappraisal quicker.
If we were, they stay at 4 and implement indexing as soon as possible.
Yeah, and that's why I put it in the plan this last time, because I thought, well, things were going like they were, it's in the plan, and we're gonna get hit again. Let's go to the index in 2 years, and then I find out, well, law hadn't changed at the time. That was that would've been last
year.
March, probably.
Yeah.
Because I mailed out in the middle of March, or the first of April, been that long.
Very good. Commissioner Alford, Commissioner Collins, Commissioner Hughes. Yeah.
I would just say the vision behind it is strong, but it's like anything else. The communication of the vision is imperative,
Yeah.
right? And so, I mean, that's going to be a big deal, how we communicate. In this room, it's easy to kind of navigate that. We got a little PowerPoint. It's awesome. We got the big dog in here explaining it. But out in the real world, you know this. You get those phone calls. Hey, my taxes went up.
Yeah.
Revenue neutrality doesn't make a lot of sense to
It
people.
doesn't mean anything.
They just think, hey, wait a minute, I'm paying $100 more this year. So how we communicate that? Maybe we need to make you an Instagram star or something. Put you
I don't
on
know.
Netflix.
I've done it both
Documentary.
ways. I think I get the same result. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. I was joking. One of the assessors in one of the other counties, he's got his assessment notice ready to go out, and the whole back page explains revenue. I mean, the whole entire back page. And I said, I told him, I said, I don't like it. I just told him, because it's like a lot of information. Unless you're working in it, it doesn't mean a lot. I mean, honestly, I said, plus you put your name on it. I said, I'd never put my name on it.
I just think
I'm always joking with him, but it's
it's
hard
great.
to explain this. It really
It's
is.
great, but I think
Well,
how
I
we
tried the
communicate is a
ratio
big
study
deal.
explaining that.
It's very difficult. And
Yeah.
and we were talking about the tax relief for the elderly. I have no idea back in the day why tax relief was tied to the ratio. Why?
Maybe we can talk to our legislators and eliminate that.
I don't
Well,
know where that
there's-
came from.
There have been bills the last couple of years, especially for the veterans, to try to eliminate it, but
Never go anywhere.
Yeah.
All right. Well, again, thank you, Gabe, for coming down from Knoxville and helping us out understand this. And Stanley, appreciate you coming over as well. I mean, I just want everybody on this committee and the full commission to kind of know that this law was passed. Indexing is available to us when it fits our needs best. So, thank you very much, Gabe. I appreciate it. You're welcome to stay. We got a few amendments to the budget we're going to deal with here in a second. Or you can go back up to, you can go there and chat with. Well, tell our friends in Morgan County hello. All right. Going back to our agenda, we'll stick with the agenda items. We'll go to B, funding for the turf. Mayor Davis, you have something?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was asked to have a proposal today, and believe it or not, I do. I'm not quite as prepared as I usually am with handouts and stuff, but I can give you the verbal explanation and my suggestion. All total wise, with the 4 parks, we're looking at $5 million. And you have asked that to look at what we could do, when could we do it, pay for it with HCI funds, not using tax money. Some people on the street don't understand the part about not using tax money, but I agree with that part because we don't want to take money that's needed other places to turf baseball fields. But we've looked at it extensively, and I'll summarize what we've come up with, and then maybe try to answer questions. Met with Andy on the timing. Everything is good there. Working with Caleb and Cumberland on the amortizations and the financing, everything is good there. The timing, first of all, and since I don't have handouts, you need to write these down so that you don't have to go from memory. What we're suggesting we do, if you agree to move forward with the turfing at this time, is that we do Bradley North, which is Eureka Road, we do Blue Springs, and we do Elrod. And that is broken down into two amounts. For example, Bradley North is $787 for what they call the base. That's a 20-year loan. and 504 for the turf, which is a 12-year loan. You know, we talked about that the last meeting. So we have done it with the two different loans. Blue Springs is 523 with the 20-year base and 308 for the 12-year turf. Elrod is 819, and I'm rounding everything, but Elrod is 819 for the 20-year money, the base, and 481 for the turf for the 12-year money. You total all those together, and you get 2,130,826 for 20 years, and you get 1,294,000, I round it to 295 for 12 years. You do the amortizations on the two amounts, 20 years and 12 years, like you all asked me to do. The amortization on 20 years for the 2.1 million is roughly 143,000 a year. You do the amortization on the 12 years, the other 1.3 million, you're talking about approximately 130 a year, 130,000 a year. You total those together, you come up with $273,000 a year that can be paid with HCI, that can be borrowed with HCI money and paid back with HCI funds. We'll go back to what that does to HCI in just a second, but on the timeline, and here's where Andy is on board with it, we would do Bradley North, Blue Springs, and Elrod as soon as you all approve it, ideally now if you're going to do it, because that gets it done now through July. Come the end of July, those three parks are done. For Fall League, he has those three parks that are turfed, plus he still has Urbane Road, Bradley North, so he's good to go for Fall League. Come next year's baseball, you start out with, again, three of them that are three parks that are turfed, and you've still got Bradley that's not turfed yet. You finish the season in May, and then you turf Urbane Road. That works good with his schedule. Bradley gets done next summer from May to July after his spring season ends. Now, what's that do to the financing? That means if you approve it, we go ahead and borrow with HCI funds, not tax money, but HCI funds, the money for Bradley North, Blue Springs, and Elrod with two different loans, one at 20-year, one at 12-year, borrow through HCI, pay it back with HCI funds. We get, hopefully, the good news in late fall of the grants. We have potentially 1.5 million in grants coming. The odds of getting 100% probably aren't that great, but we will get some of that, I promise you. But the cost, and on these costs, I use the maximum on every one of them. If you'll notice in his estimates, he gives you a leeway. He may say it costs 300 to 450. I'm using the 450. Follow me? So we've roughly got 2 million left for Urbane Road. We have 1.5 million in grant requests that we will know about in the fall. You say, well, if you know about them in the fall, why don't you go ahead and do them in the fall? Timing with Andy says to wait till after spring league is over. Plus, I've got several hurdles to jump once the grants are approved.
Mayor, can I stop you real quick?
Yes.
That's an important point. Once you get awarded the grant, is there a timeline to have the grant money spent or appropriated on that?
We'll have plenty of time to spend it, but there are several, and I don't know offhand what they all are, but there's CDBG grant and then there's a recreation grant, two different kinds of grant. And they both have some hurdles that have to be followed. So that gives me time to get those hurdles jumped. You can't start on the project until they've been jumped, if that makes sense. So I get awarded in the fall, I get the hurdles jumped. He gets through with his spring baseball. It's now May. I should have all the hurdles jumped and ready to move forward. And if it's 1.5 million, a grant may be $1 million, but if it's 1.5 million, then I've got 500,000 left in the cost of Urbane Road, plus the match on the grants. The match on the grants is minimal. It's another reason, and it's one of the things we always work on to keep those grant matches low. 17% grant match is unreal. But we'll have that match plus approximately 500,000, and that's if they all maxed out. Remember I told you I'm using the top amount? We would hope to come in under those top amounts. We don't want to spend the maximum. His contract will have a leeway in there, and we will try to come in with a smaller amount. But jump forward to spring of next year, and we've been awarded 1.5 million. If we have, we've got 500 left to fund plus the matches, and we would go back to HCI, borrow the additional money, and pay for it out of HCI also. Now, what does that do to HCI? If I'm you all, that's important. We roughly have, and I'll use numbers as we know them today on HCI money, but we roughly have $750,000 a year coming in HCI money, interest. And again, you might want to write these down, but 750 coming in, 112,500 of that has to be retained. 40,000 of that is already committed to water fund. And this turf project, as of today, would be $270,000 a year coming off of that HCI funds. That leaves you $325,000 to award out to the projects that you all approve, not me. You all approve HCI funds. We may come back next year, or we will come back next year and have to finish the last part plus the match, but that's going to be minimal. Let's say it's another $50,000. So that 270 becomes 320. You've still roughly got 50% of your HCI money left to spend, award out to the people that you all decide to spend it with.
Mayor, I think it's worth noting that we've budgeted 150,000 a year, I think it's for the last 20 years anyway. So that,
Yeah, 140,000 was budgeted for library, and that has gone away. So instead of 140, you're going to right now 270.
So,
You're
I mean-
almost doubling it, but
we've had that in the budget.
the only play thing there in the numbers I just gave you, our numbers, one of the many things I don't like about borrowing with HCI, but it changes annually. So a variable rate changes monthly, but it's usually lower rates. A normal bond will be set for 20 years. HCI changes annually. We're budgeting 3%. Right now, it's under 3%. Next year, when I go to renew with the trustee, it may be 3.1%. But we're budgeting 3%. That should be roughly what the average is. But it does change annually. Now, the other variable, when I told you that it brings in roughly $750,000 a year, the principal's building, remember there's 112,000 in retainage every year that gets added to the principal that can't be spent. So the principal builds, but the rate that we make on that money could go down. You see what I'm saying? So that 750 is approximately, it will vary a little bit.
Mayor, can I interrupt? Can
Yes.
I interrupt? Is that
Please,
okay?
yeah.
And I think that's a point that I would ask you, and I don't want to be contentious about it, but I think it is important to look at historical numbers, and maybe you can explain it to me just because I don't know. The way I understand it, HCI has only been, and I'm looking at, I asked for what did we bring in HCI for the last 15 years, and we have only been over 700,000 2 years. That's what I'm looking at, and so what makes me nervous about it, and maybe you can speak to it, is
Well,
I think
and I understand what you're saying, and me too. We've only been over it, but keep in mind, the principal's building,
right.
and even if the rate drops, it's not going to vary that much, but the rates have been historically high, plus it's building. Well, it will continue to build, but more than likely the rates will drop some. But what that does, it doesn't affect this if you approve it. What that does is it affects the amount you have to award out.
Correct.
So I'm saying right now, you're going to spend roughly half of your money on this. You were already spending a fourth on it. Now you'll be spending a half on it. But and I'm saying you've got 325,000 to spend. That may become 275,000 according to that rate. So that number will fluctuate based on the rate of return on our money invested.
You're not a fortune teller, but you feel confident about the interest rate not declining in such a way that we're back to where we can't make the payment. I think
No,
that would be
it
my
wouldn't do
concern.
that. I think worst case scenario, it could take away your giveaway.
Yeah.
But here's another thing to remember. As that rate goes down, my rate that I have to pay for that HCI money should go down too. It, to give you an example, this loan, if I had have done it a year ago, would have probably been 3.3 or 3.4%. It's dropped to, it'll probably be, it's according to what I can negotiate, but right now it looks like it'll be 2.9. So yes, the return is coming down, but so is my cost. Now the return's going to come down. He does 6-month CDs, so every 6 months that return may come down. I may be locked in for a year before my rate will drop, but still they're both going to come down, or they're both going to go up. You know, when that rate was going up and that money was making more money the last 2 years, my rates also with HCI were going up. You follow me?
Yes, sir.
So there's somewhat correlation there.
Thank you.
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
Slater, please.
So I just want to make sure I understand, Mayor. So for the next 20 years, the amount that will be available to give out in the community from HCI will be cut in half.
It will be about half of what's available, but you already were doing about a fourth of it for library, so it'll be cut another fourth roughly, yes. And keep in mind, that's not exactly accurate because only part of it is for 20 years. Part of it's for 12 years, then that goes away. Follow me? So for 20 years, let's say I'm saying it's 270, 130 of that's just on 12 years. So in 12 years, that goes to 140, roughly. So it will drop after 12 years, but some of it is committed for 20 years, which has already been the case. How long was library? Do you remember, Caleb?
It was a 20 years.
It was, so a fourth of it was committed for the last 20 years. A fourth of it will be committed for the next 20 years. And for the next 12 years, approximately 50%. That,
And this is the only avenue for the money to come from. There's no other way for the money to come.
without using tax money, it is, yes. That I know of.
And then in 12 years, when we have to replace the turf, so that money's not gonna, in 12 years, in my mind, that money doesn't, it's gonna be another 12 years that we have to pay. It's gonna be an ongoing thing as long as we have it. Every 12 years, we're gonna be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to redo turf.
What, again, I don't want to be perceived as promoting the idea, although I support, Andy and I have wanted the turf fields for years, but it just wasn't financially feasible. But what we would hope is you've increased revenue. We've increased some revenue by charging more for tournaments. Sales tax has increased dramatically. Of course, most of that goes to schools, but they will have benefited from it from day one, city and county schools. And we will have increased revenue. Hopefully, in 12 years, there would be a plan in place to start gradually doing them, maybe at 10 years, 11 years, 12 years, 13 years, not all at once, but that's how you would hope. And we would do it at that time with the additional money that we're bringing in from the project, that plus sales tax. But the sales tax is a big plus, and the hotel motel tax, both of those would increase somewhat. Those are both committed already, I understand, but they will increase because of this if you do it at some point. But yeah, the long range cost, the maintenance, whatever, of
All right.
we invest in a new truck, we still got to buy tires in 4 years too. So yeah, same here.
Yeah, the hotel motel tax right now is obligated to Spring Branch on that loan, that interfund loan. So that only has a few more years left on it, and we can look that. Commissioner Collins, please.
I would, and I think, Commissioner Slater, that's a valid point. I know with the other turf projects, we have high school fields that have turf for football. I think the cost on that is roughly half the return. So if you pay $500,000 upfront, 10 years later, it's going to be roughly $250,000. And don't hold me to that, but that's roughly what you're going to have to put back into it. I do think it's an opportunity to challenge, and maybe this is an Andy question or the mayor question, a dedicated revenue source. I saw that Athens, they have completed their turf project for their fields, and they charge on their application $500 a day for use of the fields. And I think that's awesome. So to me, what an awesome opportunity for us to generate revenue that's not on our taxpayers, right? And so if we
Right.
create a dedicated revenue, even a line item that says, over the course of years, we will have X number of funds set aside to replace this. And to me, that's a challenge to our director to say, hey, we've got this. This is a benefit to our community. Now let's push to drive revenue. Let's promote it. Let's bring in folks from out of town. And I hate to say this, but we've got a better product, so our price point should reflect that, right? I mean, if we've got a better product, we ought to charge significantly more to be competitive, especially if we can offer multiple fields, whereas in Athens can only offer one. If we can offer multiple, that it should increase our price point. So I think it's a valid point, Commissioner Slater, but I hope that we would look at it not just as an HCI source constantly, because I don't individually like the idea of taking away from outside opportunities, because a lot of our folks, I don't want to say they depend upon it, but it is something that's important to them. It's important that they apply for this, and it's important to have multiple opportunities for that grant and our agencies to seek that grant. So I think I would really encourage the department to say, hey, we don't want to count on HCI, just like we wouldn't want any department to count on HCI. We want to have our own funding opportunity to repay those. Thank you, sir.
And if I
Mayor,
could,
so we did just that with in the memorandum of understanding on the Spring Branch, we have in the last paragraph in there, we dedicated a certain amount for that as well. So,
Yeah.
Andy, when you go up on your prices, so to speak, I I forget what the number, $100 a day, and you go up to 250, whatever.
Yeah.
I think I understand what no, I totally is all of it or a certain amount of that is going to go into the maintenance program over time, because Commissioner Slater's right, and we've seen this before. And that money will be basically to maintain it, and therefore we don't have to hit HCI. So your increase in your rental is going to be, you're going to be asked to move that into a revenue line. It's kind of like what some of our departments have, where it's not a slush fund, but a reserve account or something like that, or something maybe like, and do not touch until it's time for maintenance.
like a rainy day fund.
Yeah.
Because they all won't come up I mean, it's 12 years at least. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you may have certain parks that in 12 years, we may have to look to start replacing that turf, but we may have other parks that, we may get 15 plus years out of.
And we did that with the fuel tanks where we've set aside X amount of dollars. So the concept is there.
we
know-
hadn't done the math on it yet, but sort of the plan was they get done in July, so 3 of them are done for next budget year, so he can do the increase almost immediately, probably.
So that's
that-
a very good point. Sorry,
Yeah.
Mayor. Is that when with this plan right here, you'll have 3 parks, Bradley North, you call it Eureka, Blue Springs and Eureka. So when there is weather right there and you have people scheduled for Urbane Road, you can work with your directors and your coaches to move them to the
Yes,
fields that,
yeah.
so the benefit of turf will be immediately. I mean,
And
not perfect, but at least you'll have something and you can schedule them.
Exactly. The timeline allows, it allows for 2 things really. So we're doing Urbane a little bit later because I have to have it for spring, but I can swing more games around if it does rain before we get those done for the spring. It also allows me to schedule next year's tournaments based on what I already have turfed at that higher rate, but I'll be able to say, look, I won't have the Urbane part until this period. So we're going to be doing our tournaments at Elrod, at Bradley North, and at Blue Springs while we're working on those.
And your tournament directors will know that.
They will know that
their
beforehand. It won't
tournaments
be
will
like I'm
make.
pulling it
Yeah.
out from under them. So
All right. Mayor, I'm sorry.
And I want to add, before I forget where I was at, this first year, it's sort of guesswork, but some of it will go into effect immediately. It probably won't be reserved the first year because there's other things, you all have suggested these, but in order to be set to go with that increase, there may be some additional bathroom renovations, just to give you an example, that will be paid for with additional revenue, not additional tax money. You follow me? This first year. Once those things are done, then we're set to go and all parks are done, then the additional revenue, we could agree to an amount that we set aside, which would mean we're reserving it every year and it's falling which would be the logical way to do it. One of the things I wanted to mention, the 50% of annual revenue from HCI would be committed. But Lori, I'm sure sitting over here thinking she's got a fairly hefty fund balance sitting there. We're not touching that fund balance. There's money there. I got another sheet that tells me that. But anyway, there is money there available to award. Yeah, there's money there. So if you don't spend it all in 1 year, you can add that to the annual revenue and you'll have more than 50%. Follow me? Because you've accumulated, thank goodness, and not spent everything each year.
But we could end up with years where we have no money to offer to the community because we're paying for a turf payment. Because there have been some years where the revenue has been under 6 figures.
But that was before we started doing these kind of loans, making them more money. That's why we got that approved with the state. And again, I sound like I'm pushing something. I'm not pushing. I'm just wanting you to have correct information. Please understand. That revenue from that principal that's sitting out there that cannot be touched is not going to cut in 50%. I mean, if he's making 6% on it now, it's not going to go to nothing. It's going to always have revenue. I think it will always have enough to cover this and then some. And again, you've got several $100,000 that I don't think is committed that it's currently in the bank. So, you know, if you wait and use that on years that the interest rates are down, you're going to have a decent amount to give away each and every year. It just won't be as much as it's been the last couple of years. Does that make sense?
It does.
Commissioner Alford, and then we'll make some decisions.
I compliment the mayor. I think his plan's wonderful. Kind of what I was thinking all along, and I'm glad you finally put it all together. Great job.
Mark one up for me. No,
There's your front page right there.
And I feel very comfortable that Ms. Slater, some of her questions, that there's other sources that if you've been familiar with the park and tournaments going on out there, when you go out there for a tournament, you go in there and they charge you $10 a head or $7 a head to get in. And, you know, that's a revenue source that we can touch too later on, maybe to add on to that finance that we're talking about, adding on to 12 years from now, you might say.
And I would agree with you if Bradley County was holding the tournaments. But Bradley County's not holding the tournaments. Someone else is running the tournaments. And I don't think we have any plans to run tournaments, do we?
No, but I can charge more for the fields.
Yes.
I understand, but if we were running the tournaments and charging $10 to $20 a day, look at all the revenue that we could generate.
I fully agree. We do need to run some of our own tournaments. But that's up to Mr. Andy.
I'd just like to point out that would be a lot more money that we would also have to spend.
But you gotta sometimes spend money to make money.
That's just more budget money. That's all.
But I think in the long run, there's ways that we could create enough money to redo the turf, you might say, in 10 or 12 years. If we do a separate line item that we can add on to. Just the other question, Mayor, I think I talked with Crystal the other day about a contract. Are we on any basis there? What we need to do?
If you all approve what I've explained today, the two things that would do is that tells Crystal to do a contract based on this timeline, and it also tells the person that we're working with on this to move forward with his design. And on that timeline, Louis, I followed his graph that he gave you all, and I just moved it forward a month. So instead of February the 1st, it's March 1st. But that tells him to go ahead with his design, get all the design work done, and then he's got till July to get 3 parks done, roughly. And it triggers her. Now, the only thing I'll have to negotiate with him on is we probably cannot include the one next year, the Urbane Park, in the contract. We'll probably have to do a contract for the first 3 parks and then come back, because one of those hurdles I'll have to jump on the grant is I cannot have done anything on that project till it's awarded and everything, and it's probably going to require a bidding. Now, he doesn't have to be bid. I understand that, and that's why we're using him now. but they may require me to bid it anyway. I'm just telling you, there's some things like that that I have to go through that I won't even know all of them until I get there. But we can definitely give him the contract for the 3 parks once you approve this timeline.
Mr. Chairman, do we need a motion to move with the?
Yeah, I think the mayor would like some direction on there so he can go forward, cause he's got.
I'll make that motion that we follow the mayor's plan that he's presented to us this morning. Thank you.
Have a motion from Commissioner Alford to go with the mayor's plan. Mayor, I'm not gonna make you read that plan, but
I don't have it to read, but what,
But-
and basically it would be to, move forward with Bradley North, Blue Springs, and Elrod, have those done by July of this year, borrow the, 2.1 million and the 1.3 million from the HCI fund and set up the amortization, for it to be paid back annually starting next year. That's the gist of what I've explained to
so
you all.
that's, Commissioner Alford, that's your motion, what the mayor just said. And Commissioner Hughes, you're second it. Very good. We have a motion and it's been properly seconded. Do we have any further discussions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
No.
We have 4 ayes and 1 nay. Motion passes. Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate your update on
And the
that.
way that'll work is I'll get her on the contract, and once she'll be bringing you a resolution authorizing me to sign, or negotiate and sign a contract at some point, but that tells her to get the contract done. It'll be a complicated contract because of 3 different parks and the timelines and everything.
Andy, appreciate it. I know it's gonna be a little bit more work for it, but I really do believe a lot of our people, a lot of citizens in Bradley County will benefit. I mean, it's gonna rain this coming weekend or rain the other weekend or whatever. Very good. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, I
All
appreciate
right.
it.
Next on the agenda, Hopewell School Project. Ellen, do you have a quick update for us? Very good.
In your packet today, you should have received kind of a one-page kind of classroom edition update for Hopewell. The project is moving along on time and currently under budget. They are working through phase 2 with our contractor right now, and that will be presented to the board in the next couple of months at our board meeting. And we're moving through. We have worked really close with Caleb and Mayor Davis on our monthly reimbursements, and those are going very from Fund 189. And we've got, over the next course of the next couple of fiscal years, we've got just over $10 million left to pull down on that project.
I haven't looked at it, Mayor, but she's in phase 2 of the Hopewell project. There's 3 phases, but percentage-wise, from the 189, we committed 15.1. I can go look and see, but where are we at on that? Oh, yeah. It's
Didn't mention amounts, but actually probably we're a little behind on where we thought we would be, which is a good thing because I'm still making interest.
yeah.
But we funded it, you call it 3 phases. We funded it over 3 years. We didn't spend near as much the first year
No.
as we'd funded, so it carried forward. And it sounds like by the end of this budget year, she'll be caught up. But if she's not, what's not caught up will be carried forward to the 3rd year, and then next year it'll all be done possibly. So
I've always
we're
used
okay
phases.
there. It's going well. She used all the right terminology, but I will say this, they requested more than their reimbursements at one point, and I said, no, that stays in
Well,
the fund to draw interest.
Smart business, right?
Yeah, it was smarter on
I
their
don't
part,
blame
but,
you,
but they've been great to work with. They are turning in reimbursements. We don't question them, but we've hopefully send you checks as they request them, and in the meantime, we're still drawing interest on that fund, so that's a good thing.
So basically, the update is you're in phase 2. Your school board is getting ready to do their budget and get ready for, I guess, you said, I've always called them phases. I didn't know they were per year, but basically
Yeah.
we'll finish up in 27 then.
We'll be close. Right now, we're still on schedule.
So,
They have done our contractor has done a fantastic
so when the
job.
school, right now, obviously things can change, when the school starts in the fall of 27, they'll have a new school or an additional,
Yes, they
over at
are
Hopewell.
in plans right now on shifting the current classrooms into the new classrooms that should be operational in August, because then they're also going to have to do a shift now from the library and the gym perspective, because those are that's what's coming in phase 2.
very good. Commissioner Hughes, District 1, looking good over there.
The last few weekends I've been over at the school, so I've got to see the project working. Those guys are working through the weekends and all. It's incredible to see how hard they're working.
Very good. Thank you, Ellen. I appreciate your time.
And we would like to do a formal invitation to May 19th, so we're still a little ways out, but we are going to have a hard hat walkthrough tour for anybody that does want to see current process on May 19th.
On May 19th. Very good. Laura, if you get that down. All right. That concludes all the agenda items there. We'll go quickly up to the amendments. Look at the amendments here. Amendment number 1. This is coming from finance. This is a decrease in the fund balance of $35,821, and it's going into the Public Water Fund. Do I have a motion to accept the amendment as presented? I have a motion from Commissioner Hughes. I have a second from Commissioner Alford. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. Going on to the next budget amendment in the trustee's office. He is increasing it's in our account, right, from $399 to $566, up $500. Do I have a motion to accept the amendment as presented from Commissioner Hughes? I have a second from Commissioner Slater. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. Moving on to the next budget amendment, sticking with the trustee's office, again staying within his account from $399 to $355 of $300. Do I have a motion to accept the amendment as presented? I have a motion from Commissioner Collins. I have a second from Commissioner Hughes. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. Moving on to the next budget amendment. This is from Hannah. The department is she's agriculture. Increasing expenses and decreasing expenses staying in her account of $350. Do I have a motion to accept the amendment as presented? I have a motion from Commissioner Slater. I have a second from Commissioner Collins. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. Moving on to the next budget amendment. Southeast Community Corrections, $4,000. He's decreasing his expenses and moving it in, and also staying within his account. He has it itemized there. Do I have a motion to accept the amendment as presented? I have a motion from Commissioner Slater. I have a second from Commissioner Alford. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. All right, with juvenile, she wrote that in, it looks like there, Caleb. But she's decreasing expenses, and she's increasing expenses on the other side, staying within her account for $23,400, and she is moving it from basically within a salary line, 160 to 169 part-time. Okay. Motion to accept the amendment. I have a motion from Commissioner Hughes. I have a second from Commissioner Slater. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. Medical examiner. She is also staying within her account, and she is moving money from $340 over to $335 building maintenance of $824.93. Do I have a motion to accept the amendment as presented? I have a motion from Commissioner Hughes. I have a second from Commissioner Slater. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. Bradley County Sheriff's Office, moving money from we're moving from the fund balance. And she had the explanation. We didn't get a chance to look at this one the other day. Give me 1 second. So she's moving money from a PO. Yeah.
This is, if I can go ahead while you're
Yeah,
looking
I
at
didn't
it.
get a chance to look at this ahead of
This
time.
is one where the PO was killed. She forgot to ask us not to kill it, and we killed the PO, so it went into fund balance, and she's just asking to bring it back out because it is for a.
Yeah, I got the first
project.
part of her paragraph there. All right, do we have a motion to accept the amendment as presented? I have a motion from Commissioner Hughes. I have a second from Commissioner Alford. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. And there's the supporting documentation. And this should take us to page 19 as it's written on the top right-hand corner. Bradley County Sheriff, increase in revenue, increase in expenses. This is
19 on is services.
services rendered. So we'll take those up as one a motion, right?
Yeah,
For the
you
rest
skipped
of,
one on
and then we
16.
have the page 16. I apologize. I was looking at all that wonderful documentation for $65. All right, so page 16, we have an amendment to increase revenue, increase expenses of a whole whopping $65. Do I have a motion to accept the amendment as presented? I have a motion from Commissioner Slater. I have a second from Commissioner Alford. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. Now we go to the rest of the amendments that are in the electronic format. We do have one that came in. So we'll take up the services rendered. Caleb, for the rest of these right here? Okay. We'll take up all the services rendered as one motion. Do I have a motion to accept the amendments as presented? I have a motion from Commissioner Alford. I have a second from Commissioner Slater. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. We have one that came in from EMS. Adam, this is yours. He is decreasing expenses, increasing inside of his account of 15,000, and moving money from drug and supplies over to maintenance and repair, moving funds to the Stryker am I saying that right, Adam? Stryker equipment. All right, do I have a motion to accept the amendment as presented? I have a motion from Commissioner Hughes. I have a second from Commissioner Slater. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. Mayor?
Wanted to mention one other thing about the HCI fund loan. We have always only done 10-year loans. We're now asking them to do a 12 and a 20. I think that's correct. Anyway, I don't believe they've ever approved a 20-year. I think they will, but that we have to get their approval anyway, and that will be a new approval, I believe, for us. So that's the third thing that I will do after today's meeting is ask them for their approval of the 20-year loan of HCI funds.
And who has to make that approval?
Comptroller's office, I believe. The people that approved us when we created the HCI loan situation. Yeah.
We've done 20-year interfund loans, but we haven't used HCI to pay interfund loans.
I think
Right, the
that's
workhouse,
difference,
the
yeah.
workhouse, and the ESG.
Yeah, I think that was the difference, though. They had their own.
Yeah, they had a different funding source. Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah.
I don't think that'll be a big deal, but that gives me the authority to request that too.
Smart, piling that to make more summarize. I'm sorry, I didn't have my mic on. I broke my own rule. Mayor, I know you won't be, but the purchase order thing, real quick, because we had a guest here from Knoxville, I didn't know how long that would go. The purchase order, Caleb, in law enforcement the other day, Cassandra asked for some direction. Not so much on the policy, I don't think. I mean, it is what it is, but how the commission would work with her on moving money out of the fund balance and that kind of stuff. I don't know if you were updated on that or not, but so that's the only thing we'll take up on Wednesday.
Yeah, if I could, because I won't be here Wednesday, I've got state 911. So everybody knows, The auditors or comptroller's office asked us 2 years to go to a 6-month kill POs. I fought it. I agreed to go to a year, step it in. So we did the year, and now we've gone to 6 months. How long do you all have for POs? Not on ongoing projects, but just in general.
Yeah, we do review POs monthly to keep them open or not open. The most that have blankets are our maintenance department, transportation, because of their ongoing needs. They do have to review those. We monitor them closely as far as the amounts left on those POs. And so we do request that they close and reopen fairly regularly, so we're not going to be in a negative deficit situation. At the end of the year, we do try to, as you termed, kill all POs, because for accounting purposes, it doesn't flow incredibly smoothly in a lot of our reimbursement processes to keep them open at the end of the year. So we very rarely carry POs past June 30 into the fiscal year unless there's an extenuating circumstance. We've had issues. Sometimes equipment that has been ordered with plenty of time gets back ordered. It's out of our control. So we do leave those open because those were really committed prior year funds. But otherwise, we have to close and reopen. Like this particular year, I can give an example. I walked in, their auditors were doing pre-work. I said, can I leave this PO open? She said, is any work going to be done in this fiscal year? I said, no. She said, no, you have to roll it into reserve, pull it back out in a budget amendment. And I said, yes, ma'am.
And there are things like that we can do, but just so you know, we're trying to get to that point because we've been awfully lenient over the years. So our PO situation now is they have to be done by the end of December. And we're talking about this year's POs. So you can do a PO in June, they've got till December. It could go longer than that if it's an ongoing project. The key thing is they want it to be for a purchase in this year's budget. They don't want it to be a hypothetical purchase. I may not be using the right terminology, and that's going to affect some people somewhat, but it's what we've got to do. People will need to budget more accurately, and if they don't spend it, don't blow it, but if they don't spend it, it goes to the fund balance and helps fund next year's budget, that kind of thing. So it'll be all right. It'll affect, you can see what the school's policy are, and they've got a lot more. If you look at every school as a different department, they got a lot more departments than I do even, probably. And their total budget is 3 times. So they're doing roughly what we're trying to do here. We're trying to do it gradually. I don't know how much policing will come with that PO where she asked that hypothetical question. My attitude is you don't ask the question, you don't have the answer. But the goal will be, if you turn in a PO today, it's March, in this year's budget to buy something, it needs to be on order or bought or something in this year's budget. And I think I'm saying that fairly accurately. I put it in layman's terms. And that will be a little tougher for some people. But if you guys just bear with us and understand what we're trying to do, that's all that really matters. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted everybody to know why we're having an extra meeting on Wednesday. I didn't want to go too long on today's meeting. So anyway, if there's nothing else, thank you guys very much for your patience. We are adjourned.